waiting outside in rain and putting the garland, and Prabhu did cleaning the Prabhupada's room. So very fortunate to have his association today. We'll hear from him today, and especially glories of Lord Balaram, very prominent subject. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's my great fortune to be with all of you. I have to admit, I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for ISKCON Central New Jersey, having assisted in the installation of those beautiful deities there. So when you asked me, I was like, sure, I'd be happy to do this. Thank you to all the Vaishnavas. And I'm going to attempt, for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, to speak a few words about Lord Balaram. This is the beginning of our festival season for the fall or the late summer. And we have Julan Yatra, Balaram's appearance day, then Janmashtami, Vyas Puja, and Radhastami. So these all come together and really kind of give us this mood of connecting with Krishna a little more than we usually during these festival times. So I take this opportunity to dive into the pastimes of Lord Balaram. So we'll begin with our obeisances. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lam Jayati Girim Yakripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Denitarino Vancha Kapatirubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Behevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Namaste Halagraha, Namaste Mushala Yuda, Namaste Revati Kanta, Namaste Bhaktavatsalya, Namaste Dharani Dara, Namaste Abalanam Sheshta, Pralambare Namaste Stu, Ihi Mam Krishna Purvakam. We offer these pranams to our acharyas and to Lord Balaram, asking his blessings as we begin to speak about his glories. It's a wonderful verse here. I glorify Lord Balaram, who is decorated with a glittering crown, bracelets, tinkling ornaments, moving locks of hair on his cheeks, splendid earrings on his handsome lotus face, and garments dark like monsoon clouds, who is holding a great club and a plow, fulfilling all desires and handsome like a mountain of ice and snow. It's interesting, we see in this particular verse the mention of monsoon clouds, and we're accustomed to hearing this description of monsoon clouds to describe the bodily form of Krishna. But here we see it describes not the form of Balaram, but the cloth that he wears. So we see that Krishna and Balaram are very similar, actually proper. So the only difference between Krishna and Balaram is one is white and one is blue. Garga Muni, he speaks also of the time of the appearance of these two wonderful boys. And he says, this child, the son of Rohini, will give all happiness to his relatives and friends by his transcendental qualities. Therefore, he will be known as Rama. And because he manifests extraordinary bodily strength, he will also be known as Bala. Moreover, because he unites two families, Vasudev's family and the family of Nanda Maharaj, he will be known as Sankarshan. Now, this particular verse by Garga Muni is quite instructive to us, because in this world we're seeking happiness. Everyone is. Anandamaya. We're pleasure-seeking individuals. That's the nature. And here it says that this child, this son of Rohini, who we know as Balaram, he can give all happiness to his relatives and friends. So if we're genuinely seeking to be happy, then we have to connect ourselves with Lord Balaram. And then this will be the sustaining quality of our happiness. We find in our daily lives, I'm sure most of you that are listening, myself as well, we have what we might say a dual life. One life in our Krishna conscious path, and then one life in our path of economic development. We require to have some type of income or job or this or that. So we're constantly balancing these to try and bring them together at a happy medium where we can do our duty, but at the same time not forego our Krishna consciousness. So this is similar to the instruction Garga Muni is giving, that Balaram will unite the two families. In this particular case, he's talking about Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj's families, but we can understand that by taking shelter of Balaram, by placing him in the forefront of our consciousness, that he can unite the two activities that we're struggling to balance in this world. So another very important reason to take shelter of him. And how do we get him to appear? What is the process? Well, the process is, of course, speaking and glorification and chanting. And there's a very nice prayer here. It's a special mantra that invites Lord Balaram to manifest before us. Jaya Jayananta Balabhadra Kamapala Talanka Kalindi Bhajana Avira Vira Bhuya Mama Samukha Baba. O Lord Balaram, O Lord Ananta, O fulfiller of desires, O Lord who carries a palm tree flag, O Lord who broke the Jamuna, all glories to you. O my dear Lord, please appear before me. So praying to Lord Balaram in this way, certainly he becomes kindly disposed to us. If someone comes before us and offers some very nice glorification and kind of mentions the different things that we've done and goes on speaking like this, we become very happy about that. We become, all right, what can I do for you? So in this way, we glorify Lord Balaram, and then, my dear Lord, please appear before me. And certainly he's very kindly disposed to do so. Now, there is a selection of particular names of Lord Balaram called the Sri Balabhadra Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Lord Balaram. Now, in these verses, it states near the end some very important instructions to us. He becomes wise who 100 times recites the names of Balaram, for which the 4 goals of life and all perfection are rewarded. One who recites these names pleases Lord Balaram and will thus maintain all wealth, glory, attain all wealth, glory, good descendants, and beauty. By reciting these names 1,000 times on the Ganga's shore, on the shore of the Jamuna, or in the Lord's temple, by Lord Balaram's mercy, one attains perfection. One who desires a son gets a son. One who desires wealth attains wealth. One who is imprisoned becomes free from prison. And one who is diseased becomes cured of all disease. So these are different types of what we might look at and say are material blessings that are there. But the nature of spiritual energy is that it includes the material energy. It is superior, but it's also the material energy is present. So by reciting these names, certain punya is there. But for the Vaishnavas, the Palashruti at the end of this verse is most important to us. And that is, O great king, one who, without any personal motive, and this is the key word here, akama, without any personal motive, only to please Lord Balaram, recites these 1,000 names, will be liberated in this life. One who hears or repeats these descriptions of the limitless Lord Balaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes filled with bliss. So this is our very aspiration. Come filled with bliss, come happy. This is the nature of Balaram, that he's Rama, he's the source of all pleasure. And so by connecting ourselves with him, as it says here, in a mood of no personal motive, he gives us that bliss. So I felt it was important to recite these different verses before we begin to speak about Lord Balaram, so that we gain an understanding of his proper mood of hearing about him and of serving him. Because this process of hearing is actually service to the Supreme Lord. We should very clearly understand that the 9 processes of devotional service begin, of course, with Shravanam Kirtanam. And this Shravanam Kirtanam is the process of giving service. It is actually glorification of the Lord. He becomes satisfied by that, and then more blessings and service come to us. It's just reciprocal. And of course, this is the genuine mood of Lord Balaram. He himself is in a position of service to his brother Krishna. He serves him in a number of ways. These are given very clearly in various shastras, particularly Nectar Devotion and others. He serves as the umbrella. He serves as the slippers. He serves as the bedding. He serves as the pillow. He serves as the garments of the Lord. He serves as the resting chair. He serves as the residence, as the sacred Gayatri thread, and as the throne in the pastimes of Lord Krishna. All of these different types of necessities for the Lord's service are expansions of the Lord. And these expansions all come from Lord Balaram. Everything in the creation, if we study the Caturatma, all of these different expansions manifest from Lord Balaram. So since his mood is one of service to the Lord, it's only proper that we should also have that mood of service as we try to understand deeper the pastimes and the personality of Lord Balaram. So who helps us do this? How do we gain this understanding? Well, this is explained very clearly in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the spiritual master is essentially a manifestation of Lord Balaram. We'll quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita here. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is understood to be a direct manifestation of Lord Nityananda, who is none other than Lord Balaram. So this point is stressed numerous times in Prabhupada's lectures, this connection through the spiritual master to Lord Balaram, because the spiritual master is a representative of Lord Balaram. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, verse 26, Prabhupada was lecturing on this in Mumbai. And he used the phrase in that lecture, Balahine na. And then he went on to explain that the Supreme Lord cannot be understood unless one is favored by Lord Balaram. So the process of devotional service has many different layers, many details that we can absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness. And the ability to understand all this is only there when one is favored by Lord Balaram. One simply can't make any progress in understanding the Supreme Lord without the mercy of Balaram. This is Prabhupada saying this in a lecture. If you want to understand the Supreme Lord, you must have the mercy of Lord Balaram. And then he continues explaining that Balaram is the Guru Tattva, therefore one must have this mercy. So this truth, this Baladev Tattva, this truth of Lord Baladev, means that he gives us spiritual strength. Spiritual strength is required for us to properly execute our devotional activities. And this strength, this foundational stability comes from Lord Balaram. And this is all through the mercy of the spiritual master. So we must have the grace of the Guru to understand Balaram. And then by understanding Balaram, we get his grace and we can understand the process of Krishna consciousness. So we see how instrumental Lord Balaram is to our development in this path of bhakti. Now, in a room conversation in Hawaii, Prabhupada elaborated on this a little bit more detailed. He said, we should accept the sword of knowledge from Krishna, and we should be strong in the use of that knowledge by the mercy of Lord Balaram. Therefore, we have established Krishna and Balaram deities. The Upanishads state that Nayamatma Balahinena Labha. One cannot obtain the goal of life without the mercy of Balaram. When Balaram is merciful, then you will get Krishna consciousness very easily. If one has no connection with Balaram, even if they are a learned scholar, even if they're born into a respectable family, even if they have all of these things, it will not help them. We can conquer the enemies of Krishna consciousness by the strength of Balaram alone. So in this statement, Prabhupada emphasizes two very important points. First of all looking for the easy way, right? That's the whole concept of the Western idea of the lottery, is if I just buy this ticket, I'll get all this money, and then everything will be very easy for me. I won't have to work anymore. Everything will just be given to me. Of course, that's a whole nother entanglement there. Nothing comes for free. There's always some reaction we have to pay for. But if we want that easy route in Krishna consciousness, then it's getting the mercy of Lord Balaram. And then he makes Krishna conscious very easily. And Prabhupada then mentions that there are enemies in our path of Krishna consciousness. And we might be a little surprised by this. I mean, we shouldn't. If we've read the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that the prayers in the 8th chapter of that canto by Mother Kunti are so significant. And she mentions time and time again the difficulties that are there for them in their life of devotional service. What to speak of us with all of our shortcomings and our Kali Yuga attachments. So there are enemies, but by the strength of Lord Balaram, we can conquer them. And Prabhupada uses this word conquer. Conquer indicates bringing something into submission. You conquer another country, you conquer another dynasty, whatever. Conquering means that you brought something under your control, that you have to be submissive to you. This was the whole idea of sending out the challenge horse during the performance of a Rajasuya. You challenge people, and then if they submitted, they had to admit they're being conquered by you, so to speak, and then give some token offering. So in this way, we have this ability to conquer the enemies that prevent us from being Krishna consciousness if we take shelter of the mercy of Lord Balaram. Now, Prabhupada also notes in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, as well as many other places, as I mentioned, that the difference between Krishna and Balaram is very simple. One is white, one is blue. And this is a very easy understanding. This is called Vaibhava Prakash. And this is a feature of the Lord by which he manifests in duplicate form, so to speak, but simply some small difference. And then, of course, Parashar Muni has used the word Bhagavan, and this Bhagavan carries its own explanation. And this is used to describe Lord Balaram as well. And we have these 6 qualities of Bhagavan. Of course, beauty. I mean, who is attractive more so than Balaram? He even has his own rasa dance. And then strength. I mean, who can kill their opponent in some battle, not even a battle, in some argument, just with a blade of grass? This is the strength. Or hold the entire universe on the top of their hoods as an expansion, as Sesha. Renunciation. Who has the ability to walk away from a battle that the entire world is absorbed in? But Balaram declined to become involved in that. Knowledge. He, of course, is the source of all the Vedas because he knows all the knowledge of the Vedas. And then fame and wealth and all of these different 6 qualities that Parasara Muni describes as being Bhagavan, we can attribute them all to Balaram himself. So we can understand that he's the same as Krishna, has the same qualities. Now, there is a very deep philosophical understanding of the expansions of Lord Balaram, as I mentioned at the beginning of this Caturatma, and these are all given in great, great detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins his Chaitanya Charitamrita with very elaborate, detailed explanations of who these personalities are. He doesn't just dive right into pastimes, but he gives us an explanation, because by understanding the explanation of these individuals, we can appreciate this. So Krishna first expands himself into the form of Lord Balaram. And Balaram is considered, as I mentioned, like the second body, as well as his own brother. And then Balaram assists the Lord in innumerable forms in his different spiritual and material appearances in this world and the spiritual world. And then Lord Balaram expands himself as Sankarshan, who is the predominator of the creative energy of this material element. And he creates this element, but he's also the shelter of this material and spiritual worlds. And by the will of Krishna, by the power of this spiritual energy, Lord Balaram creates the spiritual world, which consists not only of Goloka Vrindavan, the supermost planet, but the Vaikuntha planets as well. This is all expanding from Krishna's expansion into Balaram and Balaram's expansion, such as that. We know that Balaram expands himself into the 4 different types of main manifestations: Karanadakshay Vishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu, and then Seshananta. So these 4 plenary portions, they assist in the material cosmic manifestation. Our existence in this world is coming from the expansions that Lord Balaram manifests himself. And this is how he assists Krishna in this way. And in these forms, he's known as Ananta, which means unlimited, because he has unlimited manners and forms and expansions that he assists the Lord in. So this material creation has been accomplished through these noted ways, and then the nectar of the pastimes of Lord Krishna takes place in the material realm once Balaram has more or less set the stage. So even to enjoy the presence of the Lord in this world is through the expansion of Lord Balaram. Now, another understanding as to how Balaram came to incarnate here in this world is given in the Garga Samhita. And there it explains that Balaram made his appearance in the form of the 1,000-hooded Seshananta serpent. And surrounded by all of his assistants, because the Lord always has his assistants and servants and secretaries and like that, he then said, I shall incarnate upon the earth to remove her burden. All of you, my assistants, should appear in the Yadu dynasty to assist in carrying out this mission. And however, he then spoke to his chariot driver, Sumati, and he said, but you should stay behind. But don't worry, when there is a need to wage war, I will have you appear with me in my chariot, marked with the flag of a palm and the weapons of the plow and the club. So this is interesting, because in our mental understandings and approach, we have a very linear thought process. And we approach the incarnations of the Lord in a very linear manner. This one is first, this one is second. These are the order that they come in, like that. And so if we look at it from that perspective, the earlier incarnation of Lord Balaram, Ananta, is as the brother of Ramchandra, Lakshman. Lakshman had taken a vow of service as the younger brother. And in that vow, he had to agree to and execute a variety of processes and services and activities that he didn't agree with. He wanted to take a different route in many of the decisions that were made. He wanted to challenge the banishment to the forest. He was not interested in seeing Ram put into the forest. And also, he was not pleased not to be able to exert himself like this. So at that time, he took a vow. And that vow was that he would not incarnate as the younger brother ever again. And we see this manifest itself in the next incarnation. He comes as Balaram, the older brother, exerts himself a little more, has his own demons that he kills, his own rasa dance like this. And then even again, later we see he comes as Nityananda in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there completely different role. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda always trying to serve the other, considering the other one their superior. So in this way, he had this goal not to have to take that subordinate role as he did in the incarnation of Lakshman. And in this incarnation of Balaram in the pastimes of Vrindavan, he begins to kill different demons. And in the killing of demons, as I was reviewing this, I was reminded the very first pastime of Lord Balaram that I learned as a young brahmachari. Yes, believe it or not, I was a brahmachari several decades ago. In that incarnation, he killed the Danakasura demon. And this is described in great detail, very gloriously in the Krishna book. And I remember as a young brahmachari learning this pastime, being very attracted to it, and then reciting it every day when the Sankirtan devotees go out. We'd be in the van together going, and we would discuss this. Now, this pastime is worth repeating a bit as it comes to us from technically the Srimad Bhagavatam, but the 10th canto, but the Krishna book was our source then. Prabhupada was not clear if he was going to be able to finish the full 10th canto in his lifetime. But he felt the essential instructions there were important, so he produced the Krishna book. It's a compiled synopsis, you might say, or a compilation of the 10th canto. And in there, he describes this pastime in the following forest. My dear brother, you are superior to all of us, and your lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. Just see how these trees, full with fruits, have bent down to praise and worship your lotus feet. This is Krishna glorifying Balaram. Who better to give us an example of how to glorify Balaram than Krishna himself? It appears that they are trying to get out of the darkness of being obliged to accept the form of trees. Actually, although trees are generally in the mode of ignorance, the trees born in the land of Vrindavan are not ordinary living entities. Having held the impersonal point of view in past lives, they are now put into this stationary condition of life, but they have the opportunity of seeing you in Vrindavan, and thus they are praying for further advancement in spiritual life through your personal association. Generally, the trees are living entities in the mode of ignorance. The impersonal philosophers are also in the mode of darkness, but they eradicate that by taking advantage of your presence, even though they're in the form of trees. I think that the droning of the buzzing all around from the bees must have been devotees in your last life. They cannot leave your company because no one has a better or more affectionate master than you are. You are the supreme and original personality of Godhead. And these bees are just trying to spread your glories by chanting at every moment. I think some of them must have been great sages, devotees of your lordship, and they have disguised themselves in the form of these bees because they're unable to give up your company even for a moment. And Krishna uses some very affectionate words here. He says, my dear brother, you are the supreme worshipable Godhead. Just see how the peacocks in great ecstasy are dancing before you. The deer, whose behavior is like the gopis, are welcoming you with the same type of affection. The cuckoos, who are residing in the forest, are receiving you with great joy because they consider your appearance to be auspicious and a blessing to their home. Even though they are trees and animals, these residents of Vrindavan are glorifying you. They are prepared to welcome you to their best capability, as it is the practice of great souls in receiving another great soul in their home. As for the land of Vrindavan itself, it is so pious and fortunate that your footprints are marking its entire body. It is quite natural for these Vrindavan inhabitants to thus receive a great personality like you in this way. The herbs, the creepers, the plants are also fortunate because you touch them with your lotus feet. And by your touching the twigs with your hands, these small plants are also made glorious. As for the hills and the rivers, they too are now glorious because you are glancing at them with great affection. Above all, the damsels of Braja, the gopis, attracted by your beauty, are the most glorious because you embrace them with your strong arms. So in this way, in the Krishna book, Prabhupada explains very clearly how the residents of Vrindavan and all the residents, not just those in human form, but all the spirit souls in Vrindavan are greatly benefited by Lord Balaram's presence. Now, in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita, Rupa Goswami gives a very nice explanation also of the glorification that's there for Lord Balaram by Krishna. And he says, out of respect for his brother Balaram, as he describes Balaram as having unparalleled and unsurpassed qualities. Yet the glories of Balaram are exactly intended to bring that satisfaction. And Krishna addresses him more in a friendly way of dealing, not so much in a respectful honor and more of a humorous way. He likes to kind of also poke at his brother. Brothers are like this. We see this in our own relationships in this world, that brothers often, whether they're brothers of the same family or brothers of practice together, some humorous words out of friendly dealings with each other, kind of slanting, as Prabhupada says, slanting language. Rupa Goswami explains that Krishna considered it bad taste to speak about his own glories. And so this would amount to self-praise, So instead, he speaks about Balaram while they're walking and focuses his glories on him. So, in this way, the two brothers would compete openly. They would glorify each other and be very pleased like this. So we see these types of exchanges between Krishna and Balaram can also be found in relationships between brothers in this world. At this point, I'd like to take a moment and bring some meditation out for us from Rupa Goswami's Radha Krishna Gona Desha Deepika. He gives in that book detailed explanations about the appearance, the qualities, the background of all the personalities in Vrindavan Leela. So on Lord Balaram, Rupa Goswami says the following. Powerful Lord Balaram is 16 years old. He is full of the luster of youth and has a fair complexion, the color of crystal. He wears blue garments and a garland of forest flowers. His handsome hair is tied in a graceful top knot. Splendid earrings adorn his ears, and his neck is splendidly decorated with garlands of flowers and strings of jewels. Splendid armlets and bracelets ornament Balaram's graceful and very strong arms, and his feet are decorated with splendid jeweled anklets. The splendor of Lord Balaram's transcendental form eclipses many millions of glistening, rising moons, and the slightest scent of his boundless strength is sufficient to destroy all the armies of the demons. Back to this point of having enemies opposed to our development of our Krishna consciousness, just the slightest scent of Lord Balaram being present can destroy all these armies that may be opposition to us. We often see in the pastimes of Lord Balaram, and specifically in the deity form, we're fortunate here in Alachua to have Krishna and Balaram installed here. And many days he'll have a club. And I have a little saying that I'll try to remember whenever days of the Balaram's carrying his club. If the club is near, there is no fear. So when Balaram is present, just his being present will thwart the demons. What to speak of his club being there? If we take shelter of Balaram with his club, we can know that we're going to be protected. So this is a nice meditation from Rupa Goswami's Radha Krishna Gonadesha Deepika. Now, although Balaram knows the supernatural power of his younger brother Krishna, still, out of love for him, he never leaves Krishna alone in the forest. He always feels it's his duty to protect Krishna and to be by Krishna's side. And so in this way, he is Lord Krishna's dearest friend and is a great reservoir of the transcendental mellows of many different types of transcendental pastimes. In the Skanda Purana, there's a quote from Narada Muni as he's speaking to Yudhishthira. And he says that when Krishna enters the Vrindavan forest, surrounded by the cowherd boys and the young cows, Balaram is always in his company. And we can see this in all of these different cowherd boy pastimes. Balaram is always there with him, feeling it is his duty to protect Krishna. Now, this description indicates pastimes that are prior to the Poganda age. As Gopastami comes to be, this takes place on the cusp of the Kumari age and the Poganda age. And it's when the boys become old enough and are given charge of the cows, not just the calves. So this description from the Skanda Purana of the cowherd boys and the young cows and Balaram's presence indicates that they're still in the Kumara age. Because at the Poganda age, there's Gopastami celebrated, and okay, now you're big boys, you can take care of the cows as well, not just the little cows. Because you have to have a little bit of, know-how. I don't know if any of you have cared for cows. I have never lived on a farm or taken care of cows, but I've seen and observed many devotees, and it's quite a challenge. You have to kind of, So this is given to the boys when they get to a certain age. And this festival, as I mentioned, is Gopastami. So we know that after Gopastami, after the Poganda age, that there are various pastimes where Krishna is not always present with Balaram. So in this Kumar age of Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys, they're always very tight. But in the Poganda age, Krishna starts to develop some pastimes on his own, separated from the cowherd boys and Balaram. Now, when we speak about someone, we like to know about their background, where they've come from, who their family line is. So in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Sanatana Goswami, it explains that the father of Balaram is Maharaj Vasudeva, and that he has two mothers, of course, Devaki and Rohini. And Rupa Goswami notes there that he truly has two mothers because he appeared first in the womb of Devaki, and then he was transferred to the womb of Rohini. Now, this is not something that the scientific world has yet developed, the ability to transfer a child from one womb to another. But we see that through the spiritual and mystical potency of the Supreme Lord, this is exactly what happened. And this alone would qualify Balaram as being Bhagavan. Now, in the Nectar Devotion, there's also a very, very nice description given of Lord Balaram. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Balaram, whose beauty is enhanced by the earrings touching his cheeks. His face is decorated with tilak made from kasturi, and his broad chest is decorated with a garland made from gunjamala. His complexion is as white as an autumn cloud. He wears garments of blue color, and his voice is very grave. His arms are very long, touching his thighs, and he has shown his great strength by killing the Pralamba demon. Now, one thing about this, his voice is very grave. Having a grave voice indicates a certain quality and tone. I'm sure we've all had this experience, I have, and all of us have, where you hear someone speak and their vocal voice is just irritating as anything. Just the particular nature of somebody speaking, they may not have as they say, a voice made for radio. So, this isn't something we find in Lord Balaram. He has a very grave and solid and sound voice like this. So then this section from the Nectar Devotion is concluded with the following statement. Let us take shelter of the chivalrous Balaram. So who wants Balaram shelter? I'm sure at this point, all the hands are going up. I know we have that little emocon on the board there. Everybody can throw their hands up. So we all want shelter of Balaram. And not only do we want shelter, but the great personalities do. One group of devotees that received the shelter of Balaram were the sages living in the forest. These sages living in the forest when he was a young child, Aishwarya Kadambini tells that Mother Jasoda would take Krishna and Balaram around on a palanquin, much like we do in with our deity program this week. Later in the week is Balaram Jayanti, and here we'll take our small Chota Krishna Balaram deities, put them on a palanquin, and take them around to the different homes of the devotees on the farm here. And so, in this way, Mother Jasoda would take Krishna and Balaram on a palanquin around to the different hermitages of the sages living in Vrindavan, and then have them do service. Now, this is an amazing example. Krishna and Balaram are not just the Supreme Personality of Godhead standing there waiting for everyone to serve them, but they themselves go to the hermitages of the sages and serve the sages under the tutelage and direction of Mother Jasoda. This is the perfect example of a mother to teach the children how to serve Vaishnavas, how to serve sadhus. So in this way, Krishna and Balaram would carry ghee and yogurt and sweets, and in their own hands, they would give these presents to the sages. It's a wonderful description. And not only the sages, but the demigods were even ecstatic to see this mood of service that Krishna and Balaram had towards these sages. The demigods, this indicates that they're watching the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram. Now, another group of devotees received the mercy of Balaram would be the gopis who were previously snake girls. And these are gopis that were blessed to come into this particular form, and they're the ones that have the rasa dance with Balaram. Srimad Bhagavat and Krishna book both give a wonderful and very long description of this version of these gopis. And time restraints are a little bit because we're covering a lot of material here today, but we find a shorter explanation for the Garga Samhita, 8th canto, chapter 9 of the Balabhadra Khanda. It describes that their explanation of how these personalities come into the forms they are. Now, there are a couple of other personalities that also receive the mercy of Balaram, but probably in a way that we would prefer not to get, and that would be Tanakasura and Palambasura. Now, it's interesting to note that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a very detailed explanation of the different demons of Vrindavan and the anartas in the heart that they represent. And he explains here that these are anartas in our path of devotional service. Dinakasura represents the ignorance of knowledge of the soul through gross materialistic intelligence, or as he abbreviates it, jackass-like foolishness. Prabhupada, in many of his lectures, speaks about the donkey or the ass and the foolish mentality, how he's carrying so much weight on the back so that at the end of the day, the keeper will give him some handfuls of grass to eat. But just to the side of the road is so much grass. But the ass thinks that if I don't work very hard like this, I won't be given this grass at the end of the day. So this type of ignorance of knowledge of the existence of the soul is translated into the representation of Dinakasura. According to Garga Samhita, he previously was the son of Bali Maharaj, Dinakasura, and Shahishika, and he offended Durvasa Muni by disturbing the Muni unnecessarily when he was meditating and making quite a bit of noise. And what was that disturbance? Well, he was nearby with several great numbers of women enjoying on one mountain and causing disrespectful disturbance. So Durvasa cursed him. Of course, we know Durvasa is known for cursing. Durvasa is one of those personalities that if you are in the company of, you want to be very well behaved. We all have devotees like that. We know that if you're in their company, you're very attentive to your P's and Q's because they're very strong nature. So at any rate, Durvasa cursed him. He said, "You are a fool. You are an ass-like person. Therefore, I curse you to become an ass, a demon ass. And after 400,000 years in the transcendental circle of Mathura, in the sacred forest of Talavan, you will obtain liberation by Lord Balaram's own hand." So this is the reason why Dinakasura was killed by Balaram and not by Krishna. Many of these demons have taken these forms to facilitate the Lord's pastime, but have taken these forms at the curse of some scenario they found themselves in. And a particular aspect of that curse will be to be killed by Krishna or to be killed by Balaram. And in this case, we see that this is the reason that Balaram is the one to dispatch, we can say, Dinakasura. Parshuram, on the other hand, it is another demon that is quite prominent in these pastimes. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains how he represents lust for the opposite sex and the desire for profit, adoration, and distinction. So these four bad qualities, which can be detrimental, are, as we referred to earlier, the enemies on our path of Krishna consciousness. They can be eliminated by Lord Balaram, just as he eliminated Pralambasura. Here again, according to the Garga Samhita, of course, we know Pralambasura was a Gandharva by the name of Huhu. Interesting name. And he was cursed by Kuvera to become a demon because he was stealing flowers from Kuvera's personal garden. Apparently, it was a no trespassing sign. You know, you see those signs, particularly down here in the South. No trespassing, come at your own risk, you know. Don't worry about the dog, worry about the owner with the gun, or, you know, whatever. They have all these signs, you know. So apparently some transgression was made in this way. And, you know, by going and taking these flowers from the garden of Kuvera, he received this curse. Now, I'd like to tell a pastime of Lord Balaram's. We could say It's Balaram's Secret. And this is a collection of a pastime with Krishna and Balaram, the cowherd boys. This indicates that they were all in the Kumara age. Now, the cowherd boys were kept busy all the time by three activities. And these three activities are given to us as herding cows, playing games, and escaping from the demons that had come to give disturbance and kill Krishna and Balaram. So these were the three main activities. Now, further, at the beginning of chapter 12 in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, these activities are expanded and it mentions what type of playing. So, first of all, it mentions they like to play in waterfalls. There was a time at which all of Vrindavan, particularly Govardhan Hill, had many waterfalls on it. We don't see that nowadays. I've been around Govardhan Hill many times. I've never seen a single waterfall, but we know from the Shastra that it finds fishing. And the cowherd boys love playing in these. And the cowherd boys, the second thing they like to do is imitate the animals that they'd seen in the forest. There's a description of this in the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram, imitating the different peacocks and animals like this. The third thing that they like to do in the playing was to play on flutes and bugles. The fourth thing that they like to do, and this is simply an indication of boys being boys, is calling ill names down wells. Now, this might surprise us a bit, but this is the nature of boys, calling ill names down wells. And then when the echo of those ill names would come back to them, they would pretend to be insulted by the chorus of people calling them those same ill names. Another thing the cowherd boys and Krishna and Balaram like to do was play like monkeys. They like to climb trees. They like to wrestle and to play various types of ball with different types of fruits. So after relating all of this, Sukadeva Goswami voices his own astonishment. Now, Sukadeva Goswami is speaking the Bhagavatam, and he's astonished by this. And he says, in this way, all the cowherd boys used to play with Krishna and Balaram, who were the source of the Brahman effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the devotees, and has accepted their eternal service, and who, for ordinary persons, is but an ordinary child. The cowherd boys, having accumulated the results of pious activities from many lives, were able to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can explain their great fortune. So this is the quandary, the astonishment that Sukadeva Goswami puts forth. Who can understand the great fortune of these cowherd boys? They have such an intimate, friendly, loving, playful relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's an interesting pastime. Shruti Kirti, Srila Prabhupada's longtime servant, relays the story in one of his tellings of Prabhupada. He was massaging Prabhupada one day. And as Prabhupada was sometimes prone to do during his massages, he would speak a little informally. And so Shruti Kirti tells how Prabhupada turned to him and said, I like the cowherd boys very much. Every day, Krishna and Balaram would go to the forest in Vrindavan. Before they could go, their mothers would make lunches for them. Krishna's mother, Jasoda, would make a very nice tiffin, and in it would be puris, halava, kachori, ladu. And the other cowherd boys, their mothers were not so opulent, so their tiffins contained chapatis, rice, sabji. Then all day they would go and play in the forest. When they would stop for lunch, sometimes one of the cowherd boys would steal Krishna's lunch and begin throwing it back and forth between others. They would play a game of keep away with Krishna's lunch. Finally, the cowherd boys would throw Krishna their own lunch, and they would sit down and eat his lunch, and they would have the halava and puris and kachori and laddu. And Krishna would have to sit down and eat their rice, chapati, and sabji. So Prabhupada's telling this cowherd boy pastime. And then he pauses for a moment and he says very softly, Shruti Kirti tells, I just want to go back to the spiritual world and eat kachori and laddu with Krishna. So this is an indication from Prabhupada's own lips as to the pleasurable games that the cowherd boys play and his fondness for such playing. Now, one of these games that the boys like to play took place on a place called Indrasena Parvata. And on this Indrasena Parvata is a famous hill that has a very slippery depression. It's a slide for all practical purposes, and it's called Pinchalini Shila. Now, this is a stone slideway that is made just perfectly for the endless hours of fun by Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys sliding down it. As the description is given, they would make sounds of freewheeling joy as they slid down this. When I was a young boy growing up, my mother would also pack lunches for me to take to school. And she would always pack a sandwich, cheese sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And nowadays they have these plastic bags, you put it in a little fold over thing. But in those days, we just had wax paper. So she would take a square of wax paper and place the sandwich in it and fold the wax paper up neatly. Now, at lunchtime, you would open your lunch and take this wax paper off of your sandwich, but you didn't wad it up and throw it away. You folded it and put it in your back pocket because it had a very important purpose. After lunchtime, when you go to the playground, if you got up on the slide and took this wax paper and rubbed it across the slide going up, and then sat on top of that wax paper, when you slid down the side, you would go 10,000 times faster than if you just went down on your own. And as you're going down, there would always be loud squeals of joy. So we see this is a pastime that the cowherd boys did. They didn't necessarily have the wax paper, but they didn't need it because this particular place, this impression, this Panchalini Shila was just perfect as a slide for all of their enjoyment. Now, at the end, near the top of this Indrasena Parvata is a cave. And this is the cave where Vyomasura, who was disguised as a cowherd boy, joined into the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with the sole intention of kidnapping each of the boys and kidnapping each of the cows and placing them into a cave on that mountain. And that cave is called Chora Kalistana. Now, it's an interesting side note about this demon Vyomasura. He's the last demon that is killed in Vrindavan before Akrura takes Krishna and Balaram to Mathura. This understanding was there by Krishna and Balaram, and it plays into the story that we're telling. Now, Vyomasura, as all the demons, he had some very special powers, and he could fly at very high speeds, many times undetected. So his plan was to go to Vrindavan, disguise himself as a cowherd boy, kidnap Krishna's cowherd boys and friends, and hide them in this cave we've mentioned. Because he thought that if he stole all the cows and the cowherd boys, that Krishna would become disheartened, and then he would be able to kill Krishna. Because this was the goal of all the demons. They were sent by Kamsa, most of them, to dispatch Krishna. And instead, each of them met their own end. So this was his plan. Now, on the day that this all happened, Krishna and Balaram and their cowherd boyfriends and all the cows, they were grazing the cows on the slopes of this Indrasena Parvata mountain. And Vyomasura appeared in disguise as a cowherd boy, which, even in a disguise, I mean, Krishna knew all of his cowherd boyfriends. He even knew all the cows by name. He would call them all by name. So he appeared in this way while the boys were all absorbed in playing. And as they were playing, very secretively, he would kidnap a cow, a calf, and a boy, and one after the other, and take them away, hiding them in this cave. And then when he is done, he blocked up the entrance to that cave with a huge big boulder. Now, Krishna, of course, he's not fooled by any of this. He soon figured out what was happening, but because he had earlier in the day already killed the Keshi demon, I mean, just imagine how many demons must have been there in the course of one day. Because earlier in the day he had already killed the Keshi demon, Krishna was a little bit, should we say, short-tempered in the afternoon. And so he didn't want to, stretch this out or play with him or anything. So at one point, as Vyomasura was carrying away another cowherd boy, Krishna grabbed him by the back of the neck. Now, at this point, Vyomasura manifested a gigantic, huge form, a form so large and so fearsome that even the demigods, who were quite often afraid during these fights, they were scared. But even in this gigantic form, he was unable to free himself from the grip of Lord Krishna's hand. Then Krishna threw Vyomasura so hard on the ground that the entire earth shook, and the cows to which Krishna were tending lost their footing. And I know by this point you're wondering, I thought this was a story about Balaram. Where does Balaram play? And here it comes. Now, in order to steady the earth, which was shaking from the fierce throwing by Krishna of this gigantic form of Vyomasura onto the surface, Balaram put his foot on a large rock and pressed down, and this resettled the shaking of the earth. It also left his footprint on that stone, which is still there. Now, Krishna enjoyed this throwing of Vyomasura and didn't do it just once. He did it again and again and again and again and again until the demon completely lost his life. After this was done, Balaram removed his foot from the boulder, which was keeping the earth stable during this time. And then Krishna went to the cave and he smashed the boulder that was blocking the entrance to the cave and gave all the cowherd boys and calves an assurance that they were now safe. What was that assurance? Did he give them some kind words? Did he give them some sweets? No, he gave them each a big hug. What better assurance that everything is safe and you're fine now after being captured and put in a cave and hidden away? And Krishna breaks open the cave, the rock and the door of the cave, and then gives you a hug. So everyone was very, very, very satisfied. They were very, very happy and felt very protected. So after killing Vyomasura, Krishna and all the cowherd boys, they went and bathed in a nearby lake called Shirashagara. And this was to purify himself from the activity of killing the demon, but also to refresh himself by taking a bath. Then, at the request of his friends, they sat down to eat a very nice meal. Now, this place they sat down to eat, that's called Bhojanastali. And there's a problem. In the confusion of the Gopas being kidnapped, all the lunch packs of the boys, they either got lost or they got spoiled or spilled or, like this. So They were very hungry, but they had nothing to eat. Now, the cowherd boys were very downhearted, very empty-handed, very hungry, and you can just imagine a handful of cowherd boys. My wife and I used to always say, as our children were teenagers and all their friends would come over, there's nothing harder to feed than a group of teenage kids. So what to speak of these young boys who have just spent the whole day, the cowherd boys, playing, and now they're all very hungry, but all their lunches are finished. So Krishna knew that this was the last time he was going to be with the cowherd boys like this. This was the last demon that was going to be killed. So he wanted to make a special lunch. And he invoked his potency and manifested a huge variety and quantity of foods, especially foods made from milk products. And all of the cowherd boys were all speechless. They were all hungry and distressed. And now all of a sudden, huge feast is in front of them. And then Krishna served them huge portions of different types of foods. And they all sat down and ate together, and they all discussed all the different heroic events of Krishna. And in the excitement of all this, Lord Balaram spilled his sweet rice. And when Lord Balaram spilled his sweet rice, it spilled down one particular stone. And all the cowherd boys thought this was just so funny. And that stone carries the traces to this day, if you get to go there and have darshan of this place, of the white sweet rice that spilled on it. And it created a lake, as we described this lake, called Shira Shargar. So once the Gopas had all finished their feasting, and they were all joking, they were taking turns feeding each other, and, oh, here, try this. No, here, you try this, back and forth like this. On the opposite side of this hill, Indrasena Parvata, the gopis were there, and they were trying to get Krishna's attention by having a musical festival. Now, Krishna was, of course, drawn there, and this was very pleasing to the gopis to have his company. But very quickly, the sun began to set, and it was time for Krishna to return with the cowherd boys and with the cows to Nandagram. So, with a very heavy heart, he had to leave the gopis. Now, as he gathered all of the cowherd boys and all of the calves all together to return to Nandagram in the evening, and by the way, this time of day is called the Goduli Muhurta. It's one of the three most auspicious muhurtas in the course of a day, because this is time when the cows are returning home and they're raising dust by their hooves, and that dust covers everything. And the dust from the feet of the cow is considered most auspicious. So this is called Goduli Muhurta. So during this time of returning home, it's a very joyous occasion that should be filled with occasional laughter and varieties of songs being sung, and the mooing of the cows and the sounding of the flutes. But although the laughter was there and the singing was there by the cowherd boys and the cows were all mooing, Krishna's heart was very heavy, and he was not playing his flute. Now, the cowherd boys, they assumed that the reason Krishna had a heavy heart and was not playing on his flute was because of his having to separate himself from the gopis. But, and this is where Balaram's secret comes in, Balaram clearly knew the reason Krishna's heart was so heavy was this was his final day of playing with the cowherd boys, that very soon he would be leaving for Mathura with Akrura. And to this thought, Balaram took his hand and placed it on his brother's shoulder and comforted him as they returned to the palace of Nanda Maharaj. And this was what was known as Balaram's secret. So I'd like to conclude these pastimes of Lord Balaram by speaking these prayers from the 8th canto, chapter 11. This is the king of prayers. And quite the fool that I am, I have not included that prayer in my notes, although I've included it, I'm going to indicate it. So this is your homework. This is your Balaram homework, 8th canto, chapter 11, page 578. This is the King of Prayers to Lord Balaram. You can look that up and embrace that thought. So I'd just like to conclude by saying that it's impossible to cover all the pastimes of Lord Balaram in one class, no matter how long it is. It's simply the endless pastimes of Lord Balaram, and his activities can only be appreciated by hearing them, and hearing them in the company of Vaishnavas. So for that, I'm grateful to all of you. And there are so many pastimes. Maybe we didn't mention your favorite pastime. Everyone has a favorite pastime. But if it hasn't been mentioned, this is impetus for you to read about it. So I beg your forgiveness if I've overlooked any of the pastimes you particularly are fond of. And I encourage all of you to spend the rest of the week. Of course, today's Sunday. Many of us aren't working, but the rest of the week, and particularly up to Wednesday, Balaram Jayanti, in remembering these different pastimes of Lord Balaram and absorbing ourselves and taking the shelter of Lord Balaram to remove these enemies that are there in our path of devotional service. So thank you very much. Krishnamananda Prabhu, I'm very grateful you've invited me and given me this opportunity to speak about Lord Balaram. And I turn it back over to you for concluding our session this morning.
Thank you very much, Caturatma Prabhu, for beautifully explaining, giving us the instructions and glories of Lord Balaram. Let's see if anyone has any questions. Pick one or two. You can raise your hands or speak up on mute and ask if you have any.
Any comments from anyone they'd like to ask a question or mention something their own?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Just a comment. It was so beautiful, that whole narration, that I just wanted to keep listening. And you covered so many beautiful pastimes. It was really nice. Really, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing them. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. This is, after all, our only real satisfaction in Krishna consciousness is hearing and chanting about the Lord and his devotees.
Thank you. Anyone else? And we'll conclude with quick announcement.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please
Go ahead,
accept my
Guruji.
humble obeisance. Dandavat Pranam. Very nice class, Prabhu. You are narrating so details. We want to hearing more and more like that situation. So, Prabhu, just I have the question. In our bhakti, when we say we want to please that Lord Balaram, so through that only we feel the Krishna going to pleased. Like the Guru, you mentioned that the Guru is representative of Lord Balaram. So how we feel like, are we pleasing our Balaram, our bhakti, or we are not displeasing we are displeasing the Balaram, our bhakti?
If the Guru is satisfied, if the representative of the Guru, the Vaishnavas, are satisfied, we can understand that the Lord is satisfied. If my efforts at doing something do not satisfy the spiritual master, cause difficulty, anxiety, distress, discomfort to the Vaishnavas, then I can know I'm not pleasing Krishna and Balaram. But when they're pleased, then we can know that this is the satisfaction for the Lord. It's a very simple test.
Like we see sometimes, Prabhu, like we are thinking, okay, we should serve the Guru the best way. But sometimes we are ignoring the Vaishnavas, thinking that, okay, Guru is the only highest, just serve the Guru and that's all. So how to see that like a Vaishnava also the equally important?
Well, just as Krishna is not alone, just as Krishna and Balaram are always surrounded by their associates, similarly, our relationship with the spiritual master is through our God brothers, through our God sisters, through the Vaishnavas. Collectively, we're engaged in serving. So therefore, we want to serve in a nice mood that everybody is satisfied with what we're doing. You know, just like in a family, you have the father and the mother, and then you have 5 or 6 children. You know, if each one is doing something different, out of sync with what is the desire of the parents, then it becomes just confusion. So, you know, if we're satisfying the spiritual master, this means working with our God brothers and God sisters in a cooperative mood. Of course, this was Prabhupada's instruction to us. My only request is that you cooperate with each other. So this mood of cooperation allows us to do service nicely. And then that's how we can understand the spiritual master is satisfied.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Shall we finish there, Krishna Namananda?
Yes, Prabhu. You have Balaram Sila also with you. I know you have a lot of Saligram Silas. You have Lord Balaram Sila.
Beg your pardon?
Do you have Balaram Sila also? I know you have a lot of Saligram
Yes. By the mercy of the Lord only. By the mercy of the Lord only. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your Sangha and for giving me your association and letting us share together in the glorious pastimes of Lord Balaram.
Can we have a darshan, Prabhu? Your Balaram Sila? Or we have to delay?
Yeah, a little difficult to do with the camera set up and all like it is.
Maybe next time when you come this next time.
I'll put some pictures on my Facebook page.
Sure.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, sir.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the Lord Baladev.
Yes. All
Hari
right.
bol.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, sir.
Join us today evening for the Sunday Feast program. And also we have Jolan Yatra starting today till Wednesday. So this is the special days. Tomorrow, today is Ekadasi. Tomorrow is Rupa Goswami's disappearance day. And also first break is, I think, 6:21 to 8:55. And it is Krishna Pavitropana Utsav, as it's Pavitropana Ekadasi. So the Rupa Goswami's disappearance day, Gauri Das Pandit's disappearance day, Govinda Das disappearance day tomorrow, prominent day, and then Wednesday is the main day, Lord Balaram's appearance day, fasting till noon. We'll be celebrating 7 to 9, 7 to 7:30 is the Gaur Aarti, followed by Abhishek, middle Abhishek of Lord Balaram on the altar only. And then Kirtan will go on, then Katha will be there from 8 to 8:30, Prasadam followed by Prasadam. Please don't forget to join. So I know it's a weekday, but it's a very important day, very prominent day for all of us to be there. The Association of Devotees pleasing Mr. Prabhupada and glorifying Lord Balaram. So thank you all. See you in the evening. Today also we'll have a Maha cleanup before to invite Lord Balaram. We'll have Maha cleanup today evening at the temple. Please join. 3 p.m. onwards, we plan to clean the temple, clean the Prabhupada altar and the deity altar. Those who are pujaris, please come altar ready. Bring whatever cleaning supplies you can bring. Thank you, Hare Krishna. I will conclude today's session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bhakti Jai, Vaishnava Ki Jai.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari bol.
Hare